Okay, this should be loud enough. My cloud lifter seems to have died when experimenting with my daughter's stuff, so hopefully this is loud enough. Morning, Mojo. Finally got file upload, download working last night. It took me 2 weeks to get in the right mindset. It was always a 30-minute job for me once I stopped overthinking things. There we go. That's true of most things. Once you stop overthinking it, it's goes a lot better, a lot well. Okay, make sure that's on so don't have any weird shadows. Oh man, my headphones, they're a pair of Sennheiser, however you pronounce it. They curl over my ears, and for some reason, the left ear today just keeps popping out from behind my ear, and it's driving me crazy. Morning, one line, hi Dan. It's the 111. Don't make me well. Remember to take my vitamins on the on the stream. I forget every other time, so okay. So, what am I doing today? Well, we're back on app dev, um, and I've decided that, as difficult as it might be, I'm going to embrace the unknown a little bit. I'm going to try and implement my changes using the akka piece that I was trying to prototype. No, they only go won't they won't go in the opposite ears. Now I'm down it. Nope. Cleverly color the right one red. So and they don't fit like in the wrong ears. So it's just it keep popping out from behind my ear and it drives me nuts when it does that because it's just uncomfortable. Yeah, I have a pair of what are they called? Shocks. Um I just don't have US. I don't have Bluetooth a Bluetooth antenna on this machine, so I can't use Bluetooth. Maybe you have two right ears. Yeah. Um Besides, I wear these because they block the sound, right? They muffle me. If I don't have these, the talking is very difficult. So I used to wear the big headphones, but I prefer in ears when I'm streaming now. So these are the challenges. But anyway, what I was gonna talk about this. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna build changes out as I initially intended. And I'm gonna use Akka. I'm gonna embrace the unknown because if I was building this as a product right now, there'd be a risk, right? So like Trap has said, well, if you don't understand the technology, then you probably don't want to use it because then it's just you're just kind of fumbling through and not using it effectively. But have the chance to learn. Um, Putting the changes into the actual main application as an interceptor is a viable, well, a semi-viable solution. The problem is that the dependencies it introduces and the risk it introduces to the actual data layer, I don't feel are worth the benefit of being able to say, okay, this is exactly what changed. Here you go. I can calculate that out of sequence, and it's gonna behave the same way overall. Nothing in the core database is going to care about what changed drastically. So building changes out as a separate component makes sense. But then I get into how to design this. So I want changes as a separate component. So um, we're going back to this version, right? Where um, we're using Kafka to pull changes. So back to this version. That's okay with me right now. And I've got some lessons to learn, and I've got some challenges to overcome. So one of the first things I thought of is, okay, well, let me think about the planning. Let me think about the testing of the planning, rather. What am I testing? So am I going to do my normal the consumer sends a command, the command gets processed, the command triggers ACKR, etc. I'm chaining things together for no really good reason there. And can I abstract Kafka? Can I abstract ACKR away from my consumer? Well, not really, because I need to configure ACKR. So I need to set up ACKR in here, which means my consumers have to know about ACKR. So sending a command to another thing using mediator for that then to process another thing within there just seems wasted. I'm sending to please process this. So there's no benefit in using mediator there. So my actors land in my application. My infrastructure, when we get to data stores, which we are going to have to store something here, right? And this probably is a perfect use case for the document DB. I don't need anything other than can I retrieve the current version of this item as I know about it, right? So then I'm thinking, well, hold on, the state machine might work here. So I started tinkering with the state machine, right? I've got an item, does it exist? If it exists, move it between the states, right? Does it exist? No. Um, it shifts to creating state or updating state, etc. And I thought that would I could conceivably make that work, but it might be a little bit too contrived and might be a little bit too advanced for my ACKR understanding right now. So let's scale it back a little bit. Let's make sure that I'm reining it in and building out. So my primary focus has to be, can I calculate a change? Right. And it has been for a week now. This has been driving me crazy. So Mojo, like you said, I don't think this is going to be a 30-minute job, but I think it's going to be one where I'm kind of overcomplicating it. I'm paring it back. I'm going further forward and thinking, okay, well, can it do this? Can it do this? Am I making it harder than it needs to be? But this is a hard process, no matter which way I send it, because this is just the first item. This is just planning items, and planning items are going to be fundamental, but they're not going to be the only item coming through the system. Um, but that being said, I started laying things out and I'm thinking, well, I don't know where things lie. So this is actually one of those scenarios where I don't have a clear, here's a database, here's my domain, here's my application, etc. There's no clarity here. So I've got to do something to understand um, style hungry. That confused me about using Azure, Oleans. That's why I didn't pick Oleans. I went with Akka.net. Um, Even though Actor is still like this concept that is still a little bit difficult to get my head fully around. So if we're not changing this from using mediator, etc., then realistically I want to do that, right? Because I don't actors means nothing to the application. I mean use cases. So if I'm going for planning items, then here we go, right? Um, I'm trying not to overthink the structuring. I'm trying not to overthink things too much because I think I've got to learn some things here. And if this was me working with the development team, right, I'd have to go off and prototype this out. There's no way I'm going to just say, okay, we're going to use Akka. Here you go, right? I have to be able to demonstrate that, and it does bring up some big questions, right? If I'm introducing a technology because I feel that it is going to substantially um, progress, I'll push forward the application's abilities substantially and the product's abilities substantially. Should I care about the developers, right? If I'm learning this technology, what is the cost of passing that down to them, right? Um, this would be a particularly difficult one, right? Because I'd have to be building this with the mindset of I'm going to build enough framework in place that they just have to follow a pattern and they can use it. But that scares me because then if they don't understand the pattern, they don't understand the risks involved and they won't see things, which means I have to review everything that goes through this process. So, you know, your application is not just like it's limited by the capabilities of the team that are building the software, right? And that's not a dig on developers in general. That's more of a they've got to learn as well. So if I go and build this and I have a team of developers, they've got to go and pick up this as well. They've got to understand this. So when it comes to the organization, what about training? What about all that sort of stuff? So I'm just churning on all the cost that is involved in introducing a technology in an application and starting to pause and consider that. But in this instance, I have the flexibility. I have the ability to build this out, learn the lessons, and it doesn't matter if this takes me a month or 6 months or a year to kind of get my head around enough that I'm really comfortable with it. I can go ahead and do it, right? And yes, it delays my product, but I think the ends justify the means in this case. So let's get started. So the process actor, I mean, I'm kind of thinking about messaging here, right? What I did in the prototype was I kind of created this. I registered the actors, and then I um, received a message, and in here I selected my actor. So we're gonna have to figure out this eventually, right? We don't want strings all over the place. And then I told the actor, "Oh, here's a message," and I wrapped the event in a record for no reason. I managed a team that shifted to using Erlang from C++ for a new project, and it wasn't great. They had a hard time getting the language, but it was still worth it. Wow. Morning trap, by the way. Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's a consideration, right? Is if I'm picking a technology as an architect, as a you know a lead, it's not just me that has to understand the technology. Um, so challenging. In that case, it's I mean, likely for the benefit of the project was to use C++ or Erlang. Um, but yeah. But having looked at the options and having kind of considered different approaches to this, I still think that Akka still looks like my best bet of being able to process this at scale and also be able to grow it appropriately. So We'll see. We'll see. I think I'm going to learn with this approach. If I can get my integration tests up and running and getting data flowing through, I think I'll learn a lot about. I'll be able to learn a lot about not just Akka but also Kafka, and get to understanding tuning Kafka a little bit more and how to design and um, plan not only topics but partitions and partition management. Um, okay, so in my prototype, I just wrapped up. I got this. I did get this working, by the way. So basically, receive. I'm still not 100% on it, but I received it. I tested it. If I didn't have it, I went and sent it to update. And if I did have it, or if I had it, I sent it to update. If I didn't have it, I sent it to publish. But in those actors again, I checked once more just to validate. And then if it wasn't in the state I thought it was, I sent it back to the event, to the queue. The way I was feeling about that was basically because this processes a queue, it hands off to one of these, which is also processing a queue. If for whatever reason a message gets processed and the item has already been created, or it's you know um yeah, if the item has actually been created by a previous message, then this message gets picked up and it will process it and oh yeah, I've not seen that yet. So you could actually end up with 5 events for the same object coming through, and because they get through the first actor, they could actually end up being queued as new, whereas the first one is going to create it. Everything afterwards is going to need to um, check to see if it exists. So kind of re-pushing it back into the parent and having the parent process those messages again. So it did work. I actually did test it against the 32 or 40 messages, and it actually did only create the ones that needed to be created and then updated them appropriately because the update dates, I validated the update date. So it did filter them down. And I figure that once I've gone through this exercise once and see the process flow, I just get a better handle bit by bit on how this is actually working and learn. Again, I don't need to release this tomorrow, do I? Okay. So again, in the previous one, I wrapped it in this. I wrapped the event, and then I stripped the event, and then I wrapped it again, which did not do me any good. Um, so I think for right now, I'm just gonna send in the object until I know more. Right. So this is going to be, and I'm going to move this code up to the screen so I can reference it. So, look, showtime. No worries, Mojo. Thank you for the luck. Okay, so what we're going to do here is we can do receive planning item integration event. Event. Whenever it comes to events, I prefer at event over EVT. So if so here, kind of need to know my storage, don't I? I'm thinking Mongo or Couchbase. is useful here. Tenant based, although it wouldn't. I think I'd key it off tenant and identifier. So Mongo or Couchbase. Couchbase I know has collections, so I can actually put it into tenants collections to begin with. But we had issues with the configuration of Mongo. Not Mongo, Couchbase. So okay, one way I did consider doing this was a kind of a state machine on the object, and then based upon its state, then transition it, because obviously it needs to not only first check to see if it has it exists, it then needs to know, and it then needs to make a decision based upon that, and then when it's finished that, it needs to kind of store the object. But I think for now I'll write this out as I would do normally and see how we go. Um, what I'm thinking about is, do I create an abstraction that just fits for right this second? Or do I actually go all in and get Mongo in from the start? I think I'm going Mongo. I don't know. I don't know of any other. If I go SQL Server, I've got to serialize and deserialize the object. If I go Document DB, I've got an identifier. I can pull it from the collection with an identifier, and I've got the document back that I can then compare as an object without actually doing any queries. Kind of perfect Document DB usage. It's simple. I only need one object. I don't need to go and collect relationships, so I don't need the full SQL Server stuff. Don't need to worry about performance necessarily here, but I know there's other options. I know there's plenty of other options. Don't care. None of that is going to worry for me. Doesn't worry me. When's that? When's that from? Have you actually updated that in any? I love how nothing has dates on there. Oh, the message is clear. If you're an enterprise that wants to compete, don't choose a database developers dread working with. Right, but if you market heavily and become kind of associated with the NoSQL term, then developers are going to assume that you're not as good. I mean, it's clearly working because what DB did I mention the first time I said NoSQL, even though I have had Couchbase in there. Has our API improved? So what we do is we go over here, and again, I can try try different ones, right? So I create a folder, Mongo, create a Docker Compose YAML, services, Mongo DB, container name, ls, Mongo, image is MongoDB. Test. Ports. 27.117. Yeah, I don't think I've got that in use. Okay, so do that, and then go back here. Oh yeah. And then what we do is we add MongoDB there. That's that. I need to. Is there options for data? So this is all very well and good, but every time I shut down the container, the data is going to get that drives me nuts. Like the examples often assume that you are just creating a container and it's never been shut down or stopped or whatever. So what I do is, if I'm going to another project that uses SQL Server or whatever, I stop all these containers and start up the other containers so that I don't share SQL Server instances, and then I have the data directories of the ones that I need to kind of continue on mapped. One would be data directory, Docker, let's see. Docker Compose, there we go, volumes. Okay. We'll try that first. So what this does is, it's primitive, but it works. I set a data directory, and then I have copies of the script. I can use how to do that. I have, let's SQL Server do? SQL Server data directory. What do I do? I do something with the end file. That's where I do. But I did it in services. Oh, there you go. Yeah. I use the services end file in my Docker ops so that it pulls from that end, which means I can map different data directories. Um, as long as I don't have two of these systems running at once, it was fine because I remap the data directory. But it means I can just move scripts or copy scripts into other pieces. So what I can do here is that's that one. I can use this is an example, and do that slash MongoDB. Okay, then go here, do services up MongoDB. No? Oh, I called it Mongo there, that's why. Um, the DB is implied anyway. Let's go that. Validating must be a list. Oh, derp. There you go. That looks healthier. So now if I just run, when I come back, as if I just run services.ps1 up, it will take all of these and start them all up, right? But this is kind of like telemetry isn't started. Um, Elasticsearch isn't started yet. That being said, I don't have Elasticsearch. That's kind of quite understood. I clearly was planning on it. But SQL Server, Kafka, RabbitMQ, Redis are started. Telemetry, Papercut. I'm doing email stuff right this second, so I don't need to worry about that. These are all the peripheral services. These are the things that I worry about. If I was to go and use Aspire, I would have to figure out is the recommended. I mean, the recommended way clearly would be to use the Aspire services stuff so that you can hook it in better. But how does it work without it? Because it's not just that it runs; it's that the Aspire dashboard has integration for it, etc. So you lose track of it. So you have a benefit using that stuff. Okay, so that started. Mongo started. So let's go to data grip. Let's see if we can create a MongoDB data source. MongoDB. That's MongoDB. Default username. So it doesn't have it doesn't have a username and password by default. Let's have a look. Okay. That's MongoDB. Okay. Let's not have Docker sat right up there. It's not healthy. Yeah, so that should have, if I get it right, data. So now I have the indexes and stuff stored out here. So that means that I can at least stop and start the service and it'll be fine. Phil Snubble, hello. How you doing? How are things? Getting started. Installation, installation, install on Windows. Yeah, I didn't do that. Um, if there's no known default password, how will I be able to access the DB when the user forgot the password? My worry right now is there's no need to set a password. You must open the command interpreter as administrator, fine. Install with Docker, there we go, that's probably clearer. Check that the container's running, validate deployment. db.run command. Hello, one. Yeah. Current database is not introspected. Yeah, because there's no. Result. Connection ID. Yep. Topology version. Yeah, it does. Returns this object. So it's working, but I worked on several legacy product where there was a secret super password. When asked if we should remove it, then the customer rep said something like what I said above. I wish I could say I'd never done the whole default password thing or worked in that. Yes. You can co-sign to verify MongoDB's signature with container images. I mean, that's a step I don't really want to get into right this second. But so by default, having seen people try to stick things together and say, "Oh, I'll do that later," right? Is it? It's more dangerous, right, to have absolutely no security in front of it. Let's see what happens when I try to use it. MongoDB.net. The reason I'm using Google or DuckDuckGo, whatever, to search for things is because I don't like navigating through documentation, especially when they've got community and enterprise mixed in. Because I could click on something and it navigate me to a completely different context. Because it let me like, oh, you're looking at enterprise stuff. So I'm trying to. Oh, I can go to MongoDB University. That's good. Never access a DB. Let's go to school. Intro to Mongo. Very secure, don't even start it. Code first and forget about it. I wish that wasn't a thing. Oh, but it's Umongo. Umongo. What? Why Umongo? Is that U as in ich? Oh, how so? I'm open to hearing arguments as to why I shouldn't use it. One coworker I work with claimed that Mongo sometimes loses your data. It's fast though. They do the same thing Docker did, but they bury their CLI engine slash server and push Mongo Cloud. Uh, my experience of that setup, I haven't used Mongo in a few years now. My experience of that was pretty self-managed community edition, download community. Office Kubernetes operator stuff. I mean, giving directions as if you're on a Mac when you've got Windows selected is kind of a bit yeah, but is Mongo also very sensitive on the partition key like Cosmos is, I heard. Sensitive in what way? So my intent to how to use this is I'm going to key it off of tenant and identifier, so I can look it up very quickly. If you mess up what you use a partition key, you are done. Maybe. I mean, Kafka's really sensitive in that way. You can't change partitions around once you've partitioned. So it has to be part of your design. You don't get to transition things around. Um, so I would imagine it could be very similar. So what I need to decide here is let's start new. It's easier to do this than it is to program add new get Mongo DB. I don't think there's an entity framework driver for stuff like this yet. Yes, there is. Okay. MongoDB b.com/doc/entity. Mongo is bots can confirm. Hey Patrick, how you doing? How was your trip? A very personal opinion. I'm open to listening to reasons why I shouldn't use Mongo or why you don't like Mongo. Maybe Mongo brought it back. For instance, Docker's installation docs push Docker desktop. I understand business needs, but just as a CLI guy, everything felt like bloat. With Mongo, there was a hot minute where it felt impossible to run locally. Uh, those docs don't tell that story the way I've just read them. So They've clearly listened to stuff there. Right as we start off with, hey, in Atlas, you can set. They're just trying to get you to use the tools without using the. Oh, how are numbers stored in Mongo? Doubles, decimals, or text? I mean, it's document DB, so however, it serializes objects, really, I suppose. That's what I'm going to use it for. I don't. I'm not trying to use Mongo in some massive way here. What I'm trying to use Mongo for is simply as a simple data store to store the current state of every object that passes through the changes system. So once I've determined that the changes have been published, I can then create a version of this. I'm going to ignore that statement, but the rest is it in text then, I guess. Yeah, I mean it's serialized data. I'm not on the if you want to learn about the underpinnings of a document DB, I would recommend looking up Oronini or Ian Rayan, depending on how you find him. He will go into great depth. He actually just did a talk the other week that I caught for JetBrains. Off screen so you don't see my search history. Oronini JetBrains. He did a like if you want to listen to someone who loves database stuff, you want to listen to that guy. I went to a Raven conference. I used Raven DB. Raven DB has actually become more available as well now. They've kind of lifted the super expensive restrictions off Raven DB to some extent. It's a more feasible commercial product without costing a fortune. But optimization and all those sorts of things, he's fascinating. He puts a lot of work into it, and he cares a lot about it. So Raven, the problem with Raven was he had a very bad licensing model around it. So he definitely he came from a world of um, kind of he, their initial open offerings were very limited, so you couldn't actually test um, beyond one core or whatever, and then you had to pay a significant amount to get access to the actual real database. Again, in this instance, I could, for what I'm doing here, I could create a database table per object and store the current version in there. I just don't want to do that because I'm going to then have to deserialize it myself. Using something like Mongo, I've got a key. I can just go directly to that document. I get all the benefit of the speed. I get all the benefit of using an object, and I can just compare A to B and say, yep, here we go, we're good. Here's what changed. Nice, that'll be a good watch. I've always wanted to learn more about the pros and cons for them all, since my default is always just MySQL and architecting, however it makes sense. Law, yeah. And again, it it is a question you have to ask yourself if you're building a system, and that's why I'm doing this, right? I'm going down this path because I feel that it's not just useful for me to understand, it's useful for me to demonstrate and help talk about these challenges, right? If I'm introducing this as a MongoDB icon and it just got, oh, I'm going to use MongoDB, and it's not just because it's shiny and it's different to what I normally do. It's because my use case does not require relational DB at all. I don't want to use JSON in the database. I don't want to use it. I don't need the relational database. And again, if you go into production, a SQL Server costs quite a bit, right? And so if I'm using the SQL Server for this and that and this and that and this and that, my usage of that SQL Server is going crazy. This fits a document DB. I don't need a relational database in any way, shape, or form. I just need a, do I have this thing? Yes, I do. Okay. Does the SQL JSON column not do that? It does. I mean, it does now. It didn't do, right? So I just I don't like storing JSON in the database. It's not ideal. I do it in here. Let's rename this actually. Um, ls SQL Server. Right, I do it in here because um, I use the database as a outbox. But again, I can switch this over to something else. Um, when I store a data object like that and it's all random, I have to store the type so I can deserialize it properly. FYI, I'm not attacking your choice. I'm just asking a few questions since I know nothing about Mongo. Yeah, no, I'm not. I know that's fine. Um, my experience of document DBs is rather limited overall. I have used Raven. I have used Mongo. We've obviously done some Couchbase on the stream and hit some challenges there. My biggest challenges are with configuration. But once we're using document DBs, I'm good. Gotcha. Use it to think of save and drag and drop positioning on a table, nearby table. Yeah. I mean, considering the variety of objects, right? I'd have to store. Uh, Again, I don't even need a JSON. If I'm going to use a SQL database, I could just use a database with the table of planning item, right? Or actually planning item integration, right? Because I actually just need the version that I store, right? I could just store a database table, but I don't need that structure necessarily because I'm going to just take it back out as an object anyway. So if I've got it as an object to document DB, the version DB use C++ to define the objects. Not C++. Why I just Versant DB, formerly known as Versant Object Database or VOD. Actian NoSQL database. Uh oh. You know you've got enterprise. I know. I mean, they all pretty much use the same sort of tools anyway. Yeah. We should have used Smalltalk. NoSQL fast objects. That's funny. Oh yeah. So Orinini, Iron Rain, he's gone. Um, yeah, there. I forgot about that option. Yeah. But you see, the community edition now supports um a larger. It used to only support one core on the or yeah, one or four cores or something on the low. So yeah, and now you can shard it as well. You can. I don't think you could do that either. But you're still quite limited in terms of your memory usage. But you still have a lot of abilities in the free edition now. Yeah. So they do have some limits, but it's way more open than it used to be. So Raven is feasible again, I suppose. But yeah, and I love this site, by the way. It's actually a really nice, clean site. I almost ran the time series team for RiotDB. I was involved in NoSQL due to being an Erlang dev years ago. The main issue for any random NoSQL in my experience was the users trying to shove an invalid pattern on the specialized DB. Yeah, I want to get past the every problem's a nail part of the of the NoSQL thing finally. Same as I want to do on several things. If I get enough usage, understand some more use cases, and get a better handle on things, then I think that's useful. In this case, though, um, I definitely feel it suits the need. Um, is this going to be that easy? Did I have that? Yeah, always accept. It's fine. Oh, that reminds me when I inherited services that use a time series DB that was used for some reason. When JSON and relational DB thing popped up, it was awkward, but for certain patterns can be better than NoSQL DB due to just having more users and dev attention to solve problems. Yeah, and that's a another thing. If I'm thinking about this realistically, if I add Mongo, right now, it looks like the entity framework core driver for this might actually make this quite simple. But if I went to SQL and I just used a table, it could be simpler. Um, there was something else that I was really thinking about for Mongo. Before I commit too much down this path, what is my actual hmm, KDB extensively? Time series DB is a good choice if you want to implement things like metrics collection like Datadog or Prometheus. Yeah, that'd be kind of convenient, right? Work with the person who created the thing. Vector DBs. You know what? The more I'm thinking about it, the more reasonable solution here is just to stick with SQL for right this second. I can consider Mongo later, but there's no need. I can create something that's um, there's no solid argument in there to not use SQL because I've got a table. I can use an index for tenant plus identifier. I don't need anything special. Yeah. So let's go and create. Well, he invented it because he worked in finance and knew there was a need. He invented a number of languages. Arthur Whitney. Nice. Domain. Oh yeah, you can. KSQLDB is Confluence. I think this is actually its own Apache. Well, it's all Apache, but this might be developed by Confluent as a side project. Yeah, it's Confluent. But you can create your streams and you can run queries over it. Zookeeper PTSD setting in. I think who else was it that had issue with Zookeeper? SQL over Kafka was a mess when it came out. So slow. Yeah. I do want to investigate this more, but I don't. Having tinkered with this recently, because obviously with the changes stuff, um, it, an idea was to kind of run it through here, but then we get into the streams part, and then creating streams, and we kind of went into that manipulating, actually generating streams from the data. Um, I'm okay with complex. I'm okay with a little bit of complexity to get a lot of throughput, a lot of performance. Sorry, I'm moving around because the chair's sat weird. I'm okay with that. However, I still want to get something done, and the reality is, this this just takes too long. I am interested why they still have Zookeeper running, because as far as I know, the brokers kind of balance now. I thought they were deprecating Zookeeper. It's been marked as deprecated since 350. Kafka 4. So it is going away. Okay. I suppose you can't just remove it, but it does seem weird. The best thing about SQL for me now is the rollback. This allows me to do risky ops, see what happened in the rollback when I'm more confident it was I commit. Yeah. Okay. So what we're gonna do is not really. The problem is this is I'm following a structure that doesn't really make a lot of sense here. This is pretty simple, but I'm doing it because it mirrors other stuff. So important to remember though, when you're going through these systems, if you see planning item appear in other systems, it's not because it's the same planning item necessarily, because the planning item domain here, the planning item here is not going to look like the planning item here, right? Because this is going to look like the integration event actually. Oh, that's why Mongo might be a good idea. Because I've got to create a relational database. That's why. They're identifiers for the most part. In the integration event, if we go to yeah, has these all gone yet? No, they haven't. Awesome. The the Mongo Kafka is set to a 7-day retention policy, so after 7 days, these disappear. That's why all my messages disappeared. By the way, we have. So this is why a document DB is going to be a little faster for me because I don't care. These ultimately, by the way, will be IDs as well. I don't. I think these are too big. If I use requirements the way I'm intending to use them, what's going to happen is these are going to get quite wordy, and I think that's a danger because you have a message limit size on Kafka. Although you can extend it indefinitely, and you don't want massive objects transferring through there. Because if you had like 3 dozen requirements or whatever on a single planning item for whatever reason, and each one had basically War and Peace attached to it, this object would be huge. So ultimately, I think requirements is an array of identifiers as well, just like attachments is and associated projects. They're associated there, but in the integration event, they're just identifiers because, again, someone consuming it. But this isn't, again, if I store this as a single row in a record, I have to serialize that, serialize that, serialize that. So the cost of working with that object is hard. Or I create relational tables when I don't need relational table. I don't need relations. I don't need to be going through these. It's just okay if the attachment IDs are different, they're different. If they're if this changed, then it's different. It triggers a change. Yeah, so I think we are back to document DB. This would be harder to navigate without creating the relations. Rop. Interesting. It's great having a conversation with myself. I mean, back and forth like that. Yeah. Yeah, we're back to Mongo because, again, I can just say, hey, here's a record, store this data, now deserialize this data, and that's it. If I go the SQL path, that's a lot harder. So, again, a planning item is still valid here, right? The planning item here is not the same as the planning item in the other thing. So what I do is go see planning item, integration event, essentially copy this, go back up here, paste that in there. Let's go back to MongoDB Entity Framework 4. Quick start. Add the sample code. Okay. What does a Mongo connection string look like? There we go. That's Atlas though. MongoDB connection string. Yeah, core. Tell me it was in there anyway. Quick reference. That'll do. I mean, the fact that I can put entity framework around it means I can probably figure out how to get a repository around it. Your Mongo connection URI. Your Mongo connection. I get that part. And actually, you might see me introduce AutoMapper in here just for the ease, because this is the integration event almost identically. The only difference is the source and stuff. I don't care about the source of the event or the date published of the event or the event identifier yet. But either way, AutoMapper might be the simplest way of dealing with this object because it's almost apples to apples. But I don't want to store, I do want a specific entity in here. I don't want to store just the event because then I'm tied to the event thing. Oftentimes it might seem simpler to create an object and use it everywhere and just store it in the different places. But I think it's very important to remember to, even though it might seem 99% or even 100% of the time, it's going to be the same object when you create it. If you need to change it later, or someone else changes it, even harder, right? You might not be the one changing it. Someone else might come along and change your integration event because they see um, that's how you do it and break other parts of the system. So it's good to have that delineation. Um, oh, I know how to do this. Properties. That's that. That's got to be the connection string, right? So let's close that. Okay, that. I'm going to bring this up on the other screen so that I can walk through it without flicking back and forth because public changes DB context, DB context. Public class is DB context. Yeah. It doesn't know. Options of Mongo DB EF core sample. So if we have public class widget, public string, public GUID, public string name, public date time. Right. So the only really? Wow. Okay, that's the difference. Okay, so the way they do it, the way they configure it differently is don't do it that way. What they do is they create a static what don't you like about this? Oh no, they still do it that way. DB context options changes DB context options and then options there. Still works that way. It's just they create a static method for creating it. So okay, so I don't even need that. I can in my code I don't need the static on here. They're just doing that for simplicity getting it started. I can feed it. It's just feeding in DB context options. So is configuring it that way. That's impressive. Okay, so what they do then is they public class widget type configuration, entity type configuration of widget. And then in here, they're going to say build a dot to collection widgets. And that's it for the configuration. So the entity framework side of it looks, that's nice. Yeah, that's it. So all they're doing here is saying var client equals new Mongo client, and then MongoDB localhost 27.017, and then using var context equals changes db context dot create client client dot get database sample changes. I wish this existed years ago. Okay. Build a there goes the K to identify. Oh, you don't like that? I hate that it seems natural to say, okay, well, I'm still talking about the same thing, but they're not the same thing. Oh, that's simple. So the problem there is public, protected. I always think they're public overrides, and they're never public overrides. On is it model creating? Yeah, model creating. And then what you do is you say model builder dot apply configuration new widget type configuration. Must be mapped to element ID. Really? Oh, because Mongo has an underlying. Oh, that's interesting. How do you do that? How do they define the? Gotcha. So what they do is they define a there you go. So you're actually not going to complain now because I've got an ID column. Yep, that was. So there's the Mongo specific component again, creeping through. So the object ID is a Mongo concept. So that's a little bit meh. I don't really care for that, but again, it reads like a SQL database. So let's have a look. Local. Admin. Config. Oh, sample changes. There you go. Hold on now. Yeah, sample changes. Widgets. There's our widget. Oh yeah. GUIDs. So it's feasible. I could configure this pretty much using entity framework. I mean, that's as simple as it gets. If you can figure if you can figure out how to attach that without actually being part of the widget, that would be or mapping that somehow. So builder dot index. Let's do public GUID tenant identifier. Because what I want to do is let's drop that. We can't drop. Hey Dan, how you doing? How did the stream go? Did you get your the overlay, the hue, the like the red hue in? Don't know. Dan is developing his first game. It's fascinating to watch. Today was doing shaders and tinkering with style and colors. Doing good. We had a vignette, not vignette. The G is not hard to show the damage taken. Nice. It's looking good though. So nice. It's funny. I don't know if you ever played it, but there's a game on the PlayStation called Loaded. It was on the. They put it to the Saturn. Yeah, I got a copy on the Saturn. Um, and it was a violent game, and completely deranged, but it was a lot of fun. Um, the lighting effects were really cool. It was very gory. Um, and now I'll look back at it. Loaded. Um, yeah, loaded. I look at the videos now of it like, oh, it looks terrible. But back then, I just remember it looking really awesome and just being fascinated with the lighting effects and because the Saturn and the PlayStation versions were very different. The Saturn version was pretty underperforming, but it was a gory game, but a lot of fun. Okay, so how do you delete a collection? That's quite an interesting challenge. I can drop a collection. That'll work. So let's test that again. There we got that. And I want to say it has a new k dot tenant identifier, k dot identifier, and then tenant identifier equals good, dot new good. I thought of adding a perspective to my game instead of being top down at 90 degrees. I mean, as you play it, I suppose you get to tweak those things. I mean, it looks amazing, very smooth. Uh, Okay, that's done. Sorry, I'm just kind of taking an hour and a half of stream time and barely got anything done today, but I'm trying to think about what I want to do with this stuff. If I need more decorations, I get that. Yeah, I mean, you're building your first game. That's awesome. It's really cool. A lot of people don't do it. So this tool does not give me a lot of insights, it looks like. Diagrams, show diagram. Wow. Um, indexes. Okay, so entity framework did not add the index. That's interesting. So I think the reason being there is, and unless I'm wrong, I believe this is more for when you're doing migrations. So it'll actually script out the index. It won't actually. It's telling it that it has an index, so it will script it out. So that's all very well and good. But if that index doesn't exist, it doesn't know about it. So I think this is more of a um, um, migrations thing than it is a an actual thing. Which does beg the question: could you create a migration from this? Um, so if I do indexes, can I add an index here? No, no, I can't define indexes. So MongoDB define index. Yeah, you cannot rename an index. Actually, that's a good point. Sorry. Um, create index. So I can do um, db widgets dot create index. How do I select the collect? Oh, that is the DB. Oh, because I'm in the I'm in the sample changes database. I'm on the widgets collection. There we go. So if I do okay, so this would be identifier one tenant and identifier one. So they're both ascending. Let's see if that works. Nice. So now if I go on here and do modify table, edit on selection, edit. Okay, so the tooling is not perfect. And I misspelled that as well, so I can just do db.widgets.get indexes. Yeah, there you go. Number int. Interesting. db.widgets.getIndexes. There you go. I'm not going to get to test that for a long time. That's fine. But either way, we can proceed, I think, because I think that is, yeah. So what we do is we're going to create we're going to follow the same structure as everywhere else, right? So the infrastructure is going to contain the contexts. So contexts. And yes, there's only one, but yeah, changes DB context. I'll reflect back on that later. Context options, changes DB context, options, DB context. So this actually lends a very good question. Can I? Oh, really? Updated entity framework? I swear this is an 806 on my project. I'm going to test that in a second. So the object ID is actually the only thing that makes it MongoDB specific. But I don't normally put my database stuff in my domain because it doesn't have that. So that's interesting. Domain can't see infrastructure, I believe. Uh, if that's enough. I want to learn. So I like the idea of having abstractions libraries to define. Yeah, it needs the full thing. Okay. Oh, yeah, and I'm on 806. This is going to be a fun one. I could probably remove that one. I don't necessary dependency in there. Oh, it's implicit anyway. Okay, whatever. So here I have no concept of MongoDB, right? When I configure the context, I'm gonna need Entity Framework Core and so I think it's MongoDB Entity Framework Core is an official driver. So here I know about MongoDB. Here I don't know about MongoDB. I just know about entities. Yeah, in the wrong direction. The infrastructure knows about domain. No, it isn't. How do I get to? Hold on. How do I get there then? Planning DB context knows about planning items, domain entities. Planning domain. Yeah, okay. So infrastructure knows about domain. Domain does not know about knows about shared kernel. My dilemma there is obviously I need to do public object ID on here. So whether an indirect or direct reference, I need to understand what MongoDB is. Yeah. And in this instance, yeah, MongoDB is on. Ooh. More tired than I thought today. Hmm. So the mental dilemma I'm having is the fact that my domain doesn't necessarily have any concept of the storage in general, right? The domain here just knows about things that happen, um, things it can do, right? It doesn't really have that concept. Whereas if I put ID on this entity, I'm bringing Mongo straight up into the domain. It's kind of an infrastructure concern. This is where I say things like, this is if I'm going to make this decision to do this, then what stops someone else from doing something similar where they need something and they just pull in a library to do it, even though it might break the overall intent of the code. And it might seem simple. I'm talking about an underscore ID column. It's more who knows about what, when, who cares. If I build an external library, right? So let's collapse tickets. Let's collapse these. So my planning item here does have an entity base. That entity base lives inside of my entities at the shared level, at the shared kernel level. However, this does have dependencies on entity framework core and specifications and stuff. So sometimes mention what I'm up to. I'm right now doing OpenGL plus OpenAL in Avalonia in a sharp. And I thought I was being complicated today. I'm sure Thindle will be proud using Avalonia. Everything I've read about Avalonia and heard about Avalonia, people like it, except Thindle. I've not gone near that tooling yet because I just don't have any interest in building cross-platform or mobile right now. Gotcha. Yep. Production will often throw challenges in your path that you are otherwise might not come up against. Yeah, that's another consideration, right? As well, when I'm doing this with Mongo, oh, that's awesome. But now I've got Mongo, now I've got Kafka, now I've got Message Bus, I've got all these different things, and I've got to figure out, okay, how can I manage all these things in production? Today, I think I'll be able to finish this office for the web integration in our web app, at least in the PLC. Nice, nice. That's cool. Yeah, I have no issue with people sharing what they're doing. That's awesome. Um, I like to see what other people do and the different things they do, and you know, I think it's cool. Mm. So I don't want to be making slow progress here. However, I think it's worth just stopping and pausing and making sure I'm understanding um, what I'm doing. So I'm just taking my time, not just rushing through the design. Because again, I could just include MongoDB here and it'd be working, but then my domain then has a dependency on MongoDB. That being said, there's probably packages uh, implicit. Yeah, see the implicits. It implicitly has entity framework core, etc. So anyway, I like Avalonia as it targets multiple platforms and I can reach and grab an OpenGL context. But unfortunately, on Macs, they haven't updated OpenGL since 2018 or so. Ouch. So what's your option on Mac? What's it called? Um, return- oh dear. Uh, so there's no modern alternative to use. Yeah. don't don't get Emporium guy started on Macs. That was regrettable. He got on a big rant about about Macs. It was funny, but wow. Oh, completely anti. They deprecated OpenGL on Mac in 2018. They were saying that all front end devs use Macs, and that there was some solid stereotypes going on. Um, I mean, OpenGL. I remember tinkering with OpenGL back when I was tinkering with DirectX in late 90s. Our front end is Windows only, and us back end devs are switching to Mac. It's a brave choice. People can use what they want, but I don't want anything to do with Apple. Yeah. I mean, my 2017 MacBook does still hold up. I can still write code in Rider on that machine, and it works fine. I wouldn't want to try running this on it because there's only 16 gig of memory in it. It would crush it. So I couldn't develop this on that. And a MacBook with the amount of memory needed from what I'm doing on this would be ridiculous. So um, I have a 2013 MacBook. I don't know where it is, but I do have one. I lost it years ago and can't find it. It's in a box somewhere. Yeah. But Mac for .NET development is feasible. But again, the problem for me would be the sheer number of resources. If I wanted to use my Mac for development of this, I would have to seriously consider um, what it how I develop this, right? Because there's no way it would work on a straight up Mac hardware. My most recent Apple product is use G4 keyboard I was given for 3D ODF. Oh, nice. The retro hardware aspect of that is cool. And I can't switch the battery myself, glued, and I have to use toxic stuff to unglue it, which I'm not competent enough to do. Yeah, I won't mess around with batteries. You can watch all the Lewis Rossman in the world, but he's not going to. It doesn't make you capable of doing that stuff. um, can I get object ID attached to that without an? Do I have to specify object ID? Hey Jack, how you doing? Looking to have a 2016 MacBook Pro that 16 gig that my previous employer never wanted back. As you can see, the keyboard's kind of broken. Eh, yeah. I know. I don't mind using the MacBook. Right, the 2013 MacBook was far nicer than the 2017. I mean, I got a regular 2013 MacBook, and I got a 2017 MacBook Pro, and it was still with the silly touch bar at the top, which I barely ever use. Um, but it's not a bad experience, and I can start stuff up, and I can do stuff on it today. But I can't develop this on it, right? I can't. This scale of development on that size hardware would scare me. I'd need significantly more hardware, and that would cost an absolute fortune. Yeah, the keyboard on the 2013 was way stronger than the 2017. It feels chunky. Um, yeah, the newer ones got very flimsy. The newest one, I've got an M1, or the newer ones, I've got an M1 for work. That is it's nicer again, but it's not great. I would say that is a little sad that 16 gig isn't enough for what you're doing. I mean, I don't have to have everything up and running, right? I could be more selective, but that's what my memory usage currently looks like. This is a Ryzen 7 5800X with 128 gig of memory, and I'm at 54 gig. I mean, I do have a lot open, right? I have three Rider instances. No, two Rider instances, Data Grip, WebStorm. I've got um, editors running, Docker running, all that. Yeah, and I mean, I haven't got to the point of that, but I mean, Rider's actually getting kind of memory heavy. I mean, DuckDuckGo, my browser instance is taking up 3 gig, so I could lower this, right? OBS isn't chewing up too much. Um, but I host stuff. So yeah. Soon 64 gig is required limit, 100,000 times more than what. Yeah. No, these languages platforms projects often don't consider resources. True, true. It's more an afterthought now than it used to be. My intent of these is to go through and run them through profiles and stuff before I even try doing anything serious with them, because I'm not accounting for everything as I'm writing. I know that much. I wrote an enterprise scale distributed system in Erlang and a Pentium 4 with less than 4 gig RAM 2016. Wow. Yeah. And again, I could, if I went the monolith route, I could build this up into smaller applications. Actually, the way I am doing it, I could, if I wanted to work on this on the MacBook, I could do it in such a way that I I make a solution for each one of these, right? So each application solution folder here, I make a solution for each subgrouping of projects. Each one of those I could check out and work on, right? Because I could actually, the idea of the system is so that I don't have to work on the entire system as a whole. So I'm doing the worst case scenario anyway in this case. So I could figure it out, I think. But yeah, I worked at Two Sigma for a while, and they did everything in Java, and the aggregate resource waste was just sad. The Datadog agent is 140 meg download for accumulating some metrics and sent today. Wow, 140 meg. Is that because of all the libraries and peripheral stuff that's pulled in as part of it? I mean, .NET has taken to trying to do what was it, the AOT, where they compile down, they basically build the version that you need. Mr. Ranholm was demonstrating that to me the other day, where when it was full debug mode, everything was super slow, but then he did the AOT compile, because it trims out all the stuff you don't actually need, and it was significantly quicker. Totally get the economics. LT primarily helps you start perfect support iOS. I'm not entirely sure. I haven't actually done any AOT stuff. Hold on. Yeah, smaller memory footprints and faster startup time. It can be run on machines that don't have .NET. Someone from my lurk. Yeah, it's just interesting thing to do. Very magical. No reflection, no C++ CLI. So if you can get your app into that state, then it's things like link expressions will be slower, etc. Yeah, you've got a lot to understand if you want to do AOT, but if you're building something that can be AOT compiled, then you can get the benefits. I love magic when it comes to development. Never been hurt by it. But yeah, it's not a magic fix, but yeah. All this because I'm putting off this decision. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So basically, if your application doesn't need to use .NET stuff, then yeah, it can be it can be trimmed down substantially. It's made easy when it was already in a constrained environment like Blazor wasn't. Gotcha. So I was wondering if there's maybe some dirt, dust on the keyboard that messes with the input. Opening keyboards on a Mac, that'd be challenging. Although it's an older one, it might not actually be completely anti-maintenance like the new ones. How do I do this? I mean, I either pull a dependency in on Mongo, which or at least the BSON component of um, Mongo. Let's see. Public object ID. Can I override IDs? First question. 3 months. Oof. So what I'm wondering is, I don't want to do that. That's exactly why I don't want to do it. So here's what I'm thinking. If I create a public class document, uh, document, and I have public period identifier, public period tenant identifier, Then I have public. How do I do this? String ID, which is going to get tenant identifier slash identifier. And yes, I'm essentially trying to rebuild the ID. I'm just trying to get away from using the object ID at this level, right? Then in creation here, I do planning item type configuration. Here, I know about Mongo. Of planning item reference and import type. So this is where this gets dangerous. We could include the wrong one. At least you could have a good excuse for that quality review. I think Apple just prefers to send it in for service, and well, I switched to WSL2 on Windows, which is better. I found as we target Linux, not Macs. Yeah, an external keyboard is an option as well. If you mainly set at a desk anyway. The first thing I did was get a Mac keyboard, and regrettably I bought the Magic Mouse and Magic Keyboard, and I would never buy them again because they're horrible. The keyboard's even spongier than the actual keyboard. But I just didn't want two big keyboards on my desk, and I'm not messing with KVMs. Changes to me, so I got to make sure I include the right one. So my thought here is, if I can build a two, so yeah, okay, this is where this breaks down again. So as much as I'd like to avoid it, I can't really avoid the fact that I'm using MongoDB Entity Framework Core in this piece because I'm just pushing back the inevitable there. Right? It's okay. It's not going to hurt me here. My first boss had a side business where he sold ergonomic attachments for the Magic Bands. God, I thought I got a faulty one, but no. Like, Apple has been known for design for years. They've been praised for all the design choices. Who thought to put a charging port on the bottom of a mouse just so you didn't see something on the top? At least offer a charging pad for it so you can just sit it on top and use like Qi wireless charging or something. But to if the mouse, I mean the one thing I will say is the battery life on them is phenomenal. If I charge the mouse and keyboard up to 100%, it'll be at least 3 or 4 weeks before they've, and I'm using them 8 hours a day during the week. It'll be 3 or 4 weeks before they're gone. But yeah, putting the charging port on the bottom of the mouse was just like a year, and it was dirt cheap. It was just silicon suction, the name of the product. I was mad that it was successful. Not mad at him, just the people who could buy a different mouse. Mouse pad was good until it stopped working. My trackball guy though. Yeah, I should resurrect my trackball. It's getting old. um, um, Mine doesn't have the internal batteries mine's got internal batteries, so it's the new one. Um, Kensington Pro logo. Okay, so yeah, this will mean that Mongo's involved, but I don't want to overthink this too much, right? Getting it out of the domain is one thing, but getting it out of here, okay, I have to understand that it's Mongo at some point. Um, the alternative would be to configure the entities at the setup layer where I'm wiring it up, but it doesn't make sense here. So planning items, look up naming conventions later. Builder dot was that? So what I'm wondering here is if bson ID isn't specified, we look for an ID property represent the database ID field. The only time I would apply bson ID is if I wanted to use another property name for my ID field. So what happens if I take this, right? Let's discard that. Go back to our sample. What happens if I create this, get rid of that, and call this document, right? Remove them, and then run that. Then let's do, we know that doesn't work. Builder dot has ID, that has key ID. No backing field can be found property, and the property doesn't have a setter. Yeah. Private string ID. Get set is null. Let's set that. How can it ever be null? So it has to be get set. That just gives it somewhere to stuff its value, which is going to be the same as these anyway. It was. I had a love hate relationship with it. I haven't found a laptop with a function row that feels good. Is a split keyboard these days and put my iPad notepad in the middle. Split keyboard. Have tried, did not get along with. Decided that I would rather spend my time learning more about stuff like this than I would try and reteach myself how to type. I think I've just got this general attitude of I'm not going to um, slow myself down on things that I would be cool to learn how to use. It's like using Vi. I could divert myself and try and learn how to use Vi to be more productive with the keyboard, but I'm comfortable and effective with the mouse and keyboard. The time it would take me to learn and get my head around not using that mouse and train myself, I could have done a whole lot more stuff. So I don't divert and do those things. And the split keyboard, I do have one, a good one as well. Um, and it's a nice keyboard to type on. It's just positioning my arms in that position, in that odd off position, and getting my brain around navigating my hands differently just slowed me down. I was like, nah, I'm not messing with this. And right now I use a Logitech membrane keyboard. Could be good for long-term health. What, split keyboard? Or using Vi? Position is two separate pieces. I don't know. My posture's terrible anyway. I know that. I need to do more standing. My angle of my desk is at decent. Uh, and normally I have my hands rested on the desk while I'm typing, so it's not too bad. Okay, so unable to track an entity of type widget because its primary key property ID is null. Why is it null though? Right, so if we do var widget equals that widget.dump, this ID is clearly not null. But would that be some? There's no way of defining. Let's try this. Public string ID. That. Yeah. Okay. Position. So, I mean, basically the split keyboard, I I had it so my shoulders were apart, and not tight in front of me, right? I've tried a few things like that. Ooh, new toy arriving today. I get to build some furniture today. Um, so yeah, I don't know. Okay, so that doesn't work. That does work, but doesn't work. This is going to now complain about no backing field. Doesn't have a setter. But the split keyboard has two separate pieces, like left and right. There's also splits at a single piece. Oh, you mean like a Microsoft an ergonomic keyboard that's split, not physically, but the keyboard is in the position to. No, this is an actual. Um, oh, what's the one the Primeagen uses? That brand, or used originally. It's probably upgraded that many times since. That Moonlander keyboard, I do like the look of that one. Um, but a $365 keyboard is not going to happen. No, I used to use, like, I was tempted. The Moonlighter, I was like, that's a nice looking keyboard. That looks like it types really well. Um, what's the brand? Let's see. Five top five ergonomic keyboards 2024. Kinesis Freestyle. That's the one I've got. Um, basically have, it's not this one. I think it's the gaming version of this one really, but I'm going to copy an Amazon affiliate link, but it's just because it's short. It shortens it for me. I have basically one of them. And it's a nice keyboard. Um, it's not quite that. It's the gaming version of that. X9. I have tried the original. I've seen the original Microsoft keyboard, their ergonomic keyboard. I love that. That might look bad. X9. That might be kind of nice. So I have no issue with ergonomic keyboards in general. It's just split keyboard or modifying my normal workflow in massive ways is something that I've kind of dismissed as being unproductive for me. And he says that he's waffling on about this stuff. How can I implement this? There's no way I can implement this. If I do it this way, it's going to complain about nullability. Yeah, right. I could grid identifier grid. No, I'd have to create a constructor. CTOR, and then identifier equals could do that. ID equals but this is going to break in a different way because I'm doing this to learn. I'm not doing this to just mess around. I'm doing this to because I want to learn and try and understand. That would mean they're privates. Yeah, that breaks there now because that needs to be created. But that's not the way that works because now the widget needs to be created. So period identifier period. This will break again. Almost guaranteed because, well, actually guaranteed because Entity Framework won't like it. Yeah, because now there's no default constructors. You can't force that. I could make them init only properties. That would mean that they'd be guaranteed, but then I wouldn't have the constructor. Right. So if I did init, that would work. However, then this I don't think will work because this needs to be because now there's no backing property, right? So I'm back to where I was before. Set ID equals value, right? So that's functional code, but it's not usable code. That doesn't work there. This primary key properties ID is null. How's it null though? Unable to track an entity of type widget because its primary key property ID is null. But it's not null. Hmm. So what I'm learning is there's no way of avoiding this. I mean, I'm getting stuck on something that might I could just move past. I could move past. I could accept that object ID is necessary on this, or this entire piece needs to know about MongoDB, right? It's just more the I'm validating the actual need to do it and why I need to do it, not just bundling through and thinking, oh well, yeah, it's just a key, it's just a dependency, right? I'm not thinking about this as in terms of, well, what if I wanted to move to SQL Server? I could make it work for SQL Server. I'm not worrying too much about that path. I've long since validated for myself that that is not what I'm trying to do here. I could have sworn I've done something like this in the past where I've abstracted the key um, away a little bit, or overridden their key. Um, that's still necessary no matter which way I turn this, because everything has to have these two pieces of information. They have to have a unique identifier and they have to have a tenant attached to them. Otherwise, bad things will happen. Um, so realistically, the only way I get around this is I say, okay, well, no, this is a public object ID, which means I don't need that anymore, and we can get away with that. We should then have a store, collection, and a widget. We have an ID in there. We have our data again. So what we'll do for now, public object ID. And I don't have to call it underscore ID, it'll know. Right. So it's not ideal, but it's to another file, document, CS, add, changes domain. I'm going to move document up to that level. Yeah. Everything's going to be a document, but yeah. And that way, in our configuration here, that's all we need to do right this second. We don't need to do anything more drastic than that. We can add public DB set, planning items, do that. And don't forget our override. um, I always load the configurations in the same infrastructure. Again, if I wanted to actually define the Mongo stuff outside, I could potentially do it and make this completely agnostic, but I just don't think there's much value in doing that right this second. So with the planning item there and a context there, we go in here and add yeah, so that's adding Akka services.add pooled DB context factory. This is going to be an interesting one. Changes DB context. Factory builder goes to builder dot use MongoDB. So this takes a Mongo client. And a database name. Does this take, this does not take provider, does it? Oh, it does. It does. It is a service provider. Because what I could do there is services dot add. What? No. Oh, same same dilemma. Um, provider builder. Does that do? Oh, hold on, that's no, that's configured. I don't know why it's not accepting the internals of that, but it's accepting it. So that accepts it's the internal pieces from before, right? Um, add services to this container. This can be configured multiple times. Right, but that's not add MongoDB. I just want to get this in there before I call this. Insert, update, delete, configure. They do not show you. Time to work as always. Thanks for the stream. Mojo, thank you very much for coming and hanging out. I appreciate it. And have a great day at work. Ugh. Thank you. my great day at work is building furniture today for my new toy. So I'll share pictures of later. This frustrates me because basically what they've done is they've given you the API docs, but then they've not shown you how to configure it in your larger application, right? Select projections, type discriminators, scalar aggregates, transactions, migrations. Oh, it doesn't support migrations. Okay, understood. Database first. Not support alternate keys. Foreign keys, understood. Table splitting, temporal tables. No, absolutely not. Unsupported Mongo features, time series, atlas search, vector search. Okay, that's not too bad. If I need to get into those sorts of features, then I'm not using Mongo the way I intended anyway. So, oh, if you so with Mongo in the community edition, if you want to uh, submit a request for help or an issue, you have to create a Jira account, then navigate to Entity Framework project. Creating a Jira account for a so what I'm stuck on right this second is the configuration, right? So the add MongoDB, they don't document this. All their examples are basically in line. So here's what I could do. I could say, instead of this, I could say host context.configuration.get connection string um, Mongo changes. And then database name. Database name is going to be changes. And then builder is going to be builder dot. Oh, that offers very little in the way of options, isn't it? Possible null reference, that's fine. So connection strings changes. Yeah. So MongoDB 2701. I find that terrifying that it's just there's just no security out of the box. Like I don't think I've come across a database recently that does that. Just scares me. So there's three components here, right? I'm going to use some comments. Configure Akka application, just so I can visually distinguish these because I'm going back and forth between the three. Configure MongoDB for storage, and then configure Kafka for event handling, right? Because the flow is the event handle, the Kafka components will set up and listen, the Akka pieces will be invoked by the receivers, and then the MongoDB will be used for storing there. So what I'm debating right this second is I still don't like the idea of injecting the DB context. Do I want to jump through hoops trying to solve that problem? I wonder if. I wonder. How does. How do we do it in planning? So planning infrastructure. I do have a repository. Can I do it? This might break. um, quite badly. Changes domain. No, not domain. Infrastructure has a repository. Okay, so planning repository. Hey Napalm, how you going? How's it going? And this is a changes DB context. That's a repository. Oh, not too bad. Good. Oh, this might be very bad what I'm about to try and do. What's the worst that happens? I probably won't know if it works either until later. So what we're going to do is we're going to say add repositories, services, add repositories, plan repository. And the idea here is in the actor then, what I would do is I would inject the I repository of planning item. Changes domain, events, integration, changes domain, shared repositories. Okay, that was. Then the repository dot. I don't believe this is going to work. First, the default async, new. I taught myself out using MS Alliance for my fishing side project. Why not? Why not give it a whirl? I think it's so overkill, of course. Some of what I'm doing here might be considered overkill, right? But in reality, I don't know until I get there. And I'd rather learn on a project that doesn't really matter in the long term. Than learning an actual product. Event identifier. Oh, document by let's be trying to be clear about what I'm trying to do here. GUID tenant identifier. GUID identifier. So x dot tenant identifier. Whoa. Equals tenant. One day I'll learn how the keyboard works. Then that'll be event. Oh, Ryder, understand what I'm trying to do here. So I don't have a cancellation token, so this is going to be interesting. I think I can do async, but I don't think that's advised in Akka. Avoid using async lambda when delegate type returns void. That's an interesting challenge now. This actually messes with the behavior. Avoid using async delegate type. So what's your opinion, Akka versus Owen? I don't think I understand them enough to really make an informed decision. I've actually got stuff working with Akka before. Orleans with grains and silos and stuff kind of mess with my brain a little bit. And I haven't seen any real use cases for them play out. So for me, it's more for this. It's sheerly it's purely a process thing where I'm going to do many things. I'm going to get a lot of messages coming through. I need to break them up. It seems logical to try and do this. and I have the flexibility and the time to do it. Right. So the changes, I could feed thousands of messages through, and I want to calculate thousands of changes. Right. Um, I'm not going to be able to test that though. Yeah. I do know enough to know that this will give me what I want in terms of it will scale appropriately. It will process um, more throughput without me having to scale up Kafka consumers. So I will get more throughput. I've tested with a couple of dozen data records to see that the behavior is exactly as I expect. Um, so what I'm be doing with this is testing to see if I need to process this thing. If I do, pass it to the actor responsible for doing that thing, and then hand it off and kind of break it up. So it's more of a I want to learn more about how to use it effectively and see. And for me, I'm not going to be able to go off and read it and visualize their examples. I'm going to have to do something. So that's why I'm saying. That's why I said, why not try it? Right? The idea makes sense. Um, I know why I'm doing it, but by doing it and falling on my face a few times, I'm going to understand the challenges more. Um, and I definitely have embraced recently this. If I feel that something isn't working properly, it's not the library, it's me, right? Because it's me pushing against a way it wasn't actually intended to work. So it gives me somewhere to focus my energy on learning. Um, it's not a, oh, I need to just figure a way around it. It's a, okay, what am I doing wrong that means this is a, um, um, why is this painful? It's more likely I'm doing something that I shouldn't be doing. I get the inspection. Um, right, but I can't do that. No, I can't. I can't do that though. Hypes the output of a task directly to the recipient's mailbox once the task completes itself. Oh, oh. Does that mean that? uh, um, that would be that, that would not be good. Um, actors. So what I'm looking at here is this documentation. So I'm trying to understand. So 2016 acts as async. The mailbox pushes messages into your actors on receive method as soon as the previous iteration of the on receive function exits. So when you wait an async operation inside the on receive, you prematurely exit the on receive, and the mailbox will push a new message into it. The below is no longer true. You can use async and await inside actors now. I've been able to since Hacker 1. On receive async, receive actor. The below is no longer true. The below. So the pipe 2 is kind of fascinating because basically you can just say, okay, well, go do this thing, and then so you're really doing the asynchronous component using Akka to just pass messages back into the pipeline. I kind of get that. That's interesting. And you can send it to a different actor if you want to. But actually, that's can I. This is really an odd issue due to Akka being a library rather than part of the platform. There's no need for async await pattern when you have async message passing as an inherent part of your system. So the thought that was going through my head then was more thinking about this in my normal way of, right, await var result equals this, right, which can work, right, it will work, it just doesn't like doing it, is wrong, because in reality I need to embrace the the platform, right, embrace the behavior, and that's what that pipe 2 is making me think. That I'm like, oh, hold on, so realistically I get a planning item integration event. If I pipe the result of this out to myself, then I'm going to get a planning item, right? Or null, which is the confusing part. That's what that's what I was just thinking through. But then I'm not. But I've got a whole different way of thinking about that design, and now that changes up what I can't speak entirely to backup, but in Erlang you not need a wait. You just have multiple actors working on different things, and we're doing a receive and a response message. Right. So that's kind of where I'm going, right? In that I, I need to, rather than think about this as a set of think of this as a sequenced, ask for this, is this, do this, is this, do this. I could actually change that way of thinking and say, go and process this, and then that will move to the next piece and the next piece, and rather than having it all as ifs, I could represent it as kind of a workflow through using this. But that pipe 2 is weird, because then if I get null, because this is the exact scenario, right? If I get something there, the handler of this needs to, it exists, so I can proceed. I don't have to keep in my um um in my demo it worked, but it worked because it, I was asking, oh, okay, do you know about this thing? No, you don't know about this thing. Okay, go back here, and basically re queuing those messages to the right, to the different actors. Whereas if I rethink how I approach the async component, then, but can I wrap this pipe 2? Because then if I do continue with, he goes to, because this returns a task. And then that, but it's an action. I've not used continuations. But that would put me in a loop if I passed it back to myself. That's quite fascinating. Because that's ultimately what I want to do is if it's not null, then I want to pass the planning item, right? Otherwise, I want to pass key.result. Otherwise, huh? It's giving me a whole different way of thinking about that. I mean, I'd still have to check in the individual actors. Okay, do you exist? If you don't, then this would be a repetitive pattern. Wow. And that's why I've persisted here. That's why I've persisted with proceeding with this because again, understanding how the framework works, understanding the uses. If nothing else, if I get 3-4 weeks down the line and I've built this out and it's kind of flaky and I see it being flaky, I'll have learned something and hopefully things like this will become more apparent to me as I grow with it and I have that challenge. Then I have a different tool in the belt, right? Um, I can decide down the line, okay, do I want to invest more time understanding this? Do I want to invest more time training in this? Can I find resources that allow me to grow this understanding? Because that's just kind of broken my head that I'm like, well, now I just kind of pipe it. So I could choose a different actor here because it gives me some branching opportunities. And again, each one is processing. But like I said, it's the async, the message passing is an inherent component. The pipe to method takes an I can tell object as a required argument, which tells the method where to pipe the results for an asynchronous task. Whenever you kick off a task and use pipe to deliver the results to some actor ref or actor selection, here's how your actor is really processing it. Async call finishes. Queued unprocessed messages. Unique address, mailbox pushes. Kicks off an async method, call for messages. Async call finishes later, uses pipe to deliver a result as a new message into mailbox. Yeah. So pipe two takes is this task a recipient and an actor ref. I thought async await could make sense for Akka if you're trying to get a message from MTQ. Well, I think it's more for this. It's more embracing the message passing aspect of it. So rather than rather than waiting on this, I basically say, okay, go off and do this. If it takes a while, it takes a while. Keep processing messages, right? And when the result of this comes back, just um, pass it to this actor or pass it back into this message. Because again, I could do a receive here and do a receive a different type, right? So this actor is using, um, and I think that's why the state machine. If I'm transitioning this data through states, then I could potentially pass it and attach a state and use a state machine. That's again, I could be overthinking that again. Um, but it's kind of embracing that more than just, oh, traditionally I would write if this, if it, if the state is this, I'm actually reacting to the state of the data, um, and just letting it go off and do its thing. So it can run things in, it can process them through, which is exactly the behavior I need, right? What does an actor do if there's nothing to do? It goes to sleep. Aaron Stannard does a pretty good job of explaining that. There's a good set of videos on YouTube, that Aaron Stannard of Peterbridge has talked about. He talks about how it puts that into a very quiet state. Um, but what he does, well, that document I was reading, and again, your experience and understanding might, you know, enable you to get more from that. Um, yes, but what happens with the thread that runs the code? That should be released to allow to. Yeah, and I believe it does. It does. What does it say? Um, Whenever you await an async operation inside the onReceive, you prematurely exit the onReceive method, and the mailbox will push a new message into it. So I would imagine you get some form of contention there as well. So the await will just bail out and get a new message and process the next one. So if you kind of if it's a queue, you are then getting the next message and not waiting on the current one. So you could actually end up with messages overstepping. So I'm still going to need to test if things exist when I get the updates, because I could have actually again processed the message if I pass it off to different actors. So unless I'm wrong, if if I use the same actor for everything, right? If this process actor runs on that thread, if I if I pipe the results of this to itself, then I'm waiting on that message might get piped. I might have a queue of 50,000 Kafka messages, and then I'm piping the results of those things onto the end of that queue. So until I've got through the 50,000 Kafka messages, I won't ever get back to that queue. So it's the design of this is going to matter. So what I'm thinking here is if I can use the pipe to say, okay, well, based upon the result of this, pipe it to a different actor, I could actually make that decision. And then when the next message comes in here, once those queues are being handled. So I could end up with, if I get 5 messages, 3 of them are updates for the same entity. So the first one comes in, I don't have the document yet. I store the document as a result of this, but I don't. But I do it all in the same actor. I don't store that until later. That's as soon as that hands off to a new actor or whatever, the next message is going to process. That comes in. It still doesn't exist in the database because that other one hasn't finished yet. It's going to go into the same handler. The first one finishes, the third event comes in. This is now exists and creates an update. The second one is going to get requeued. So I'm going to have to make sure I keep a track of the update dates. Otherwise, I'm going to have crazy levels of. I mean, again, right now, the number of updates I'm doing aren't going to really demonstrate this best, but I think I'm understanding that correctly. So the two message boxes would process independently. They process on their own threads, and that's why I'm using Akka rather than using just Kafka scale out. Because if I wanted to get more throughput for Kafka, I'd have to spool up more instances of the consumer. Whereas with Akka, I can get more throughput if I design the actors correctly. But I'll have to worry about the state of the object and whether it should be updating it or whatever. And I have to decide at what point do I want to say, because what should happen is if I send 5 updates in their queue, the updates, the changes stream would produce the changes as one block essentially. It can produce the changes as one, or it could produce the changes as three, depending on the order the message is processed in, which is okay. The stream of changes can come out in those changes did happen. It just doesn't represent that they happened atomically, because if I update the name, then I update the description, then I update the review date, and those were three separate messages from Kafka. The first one comes in, the document doesn't exist. It goes and says, okay, now go to the actor for creating the document, because that's a different flow again. Once it's created, it needs to publish an event to say, okay, well, now this has been created. But the second one comes into that. The second one gets queued up into that because it still doesn't exist yet. The third one, so it does the same thing. It sends that to the create. The third one comes in, and now the document exists. Now it needs to trigger an update. So you could get a create and an update event that come out in almost the exact same time, and it looks like a lot's changed. But until I get to the point where I can actually see that, I don't think I get my brain fight around it. So I think it's worth persevering and just sticking with this and figuring out and learning about the design and the options that are available to me. So I kind of get I understand the concept of the await is bad here. I want to kind of pipe this off, and I don't want to pipe this to itself. But I would like to kind of figure out, is it possible to pipe it to I mean 2015, that's Akka pipe to are there other alternatives to pipe to? Like, can I do a branch of some form? Was this article written 2022? Okay, so this is more recent. I recently learned this article's many of our own users under the impression that Akka don't support await semantics and the pipe to is the only blessed pathway. That's what this post. Okay, so I'm I'm falling into that trap already. Um, oh, so there isn't. Okay, so they do have an async override for it. So they are embracing that. What receive async signifies that the receive handler is going to return a task rather than simply being a void method of some kind. And the actor has infrastructure built in for suspending processing of any further messages each time an await is reached. So the challenge there is that I could queue back up things. So if I do that, oh, it's already asynchronous, so it's going to be, no, it's not asynchronous. And then that's back to my original path now. So they've changed the behavior when you know it's async, but it does stop processing. So while I'm awaiting this, if that's a long running process, so it comes down to the design, right? If I know that could be long running and I want to await it, then I just do the regular and pipe two, so it goes to a different queue when it's finished, and that allows me to continue the processing. Once the await completes an active task, the mail was suspending. Once the await completes active task, schedule message is sent containing the remainder of the areas. What? Receive handler is going to return a task rather than simply being a void method of some kind. And the actor has infrastructure built in for suspending processing of any further messages each time an await is reached. So it's costly to do it that way because I'm not going to get the throughput. So that got it in sequence. Await scenario and pipe two. So these all came out of sequence because they obviously have different delays. Okay. 11 milliseconds. So it's much slower. The await is way slower. 20 times slower. You should use await when you have a sequence of tasks that need to be completed in a specific order. Fetch data from web service, persistent database. Task is simple and ordering doesn't matter. Okay, so I think I can embrace that a little bit. So again, if so, this is var planning item, right? If planning item is null, then I essentially do want to now want to send, right? So I need an actor equals context. Oh, this keeps me a context as well. So if you use context in an async one, it basically tells you no, it doesn't exist after the async call. Instance context dot actor or actor selection actor path user, right? Because we're going to publish a new one, and then we're going to do actor.tell event. Which in that actor we're going to do the exact same thing there, but that's okay. Otherwise, bar actor context actor selection. C#13. Params overload resolution. Okay. A new lock. Ah, they create a lock type finally. Okay. That always got confusing. So unless I'm wrong, lock still is lock um thread safe? It's in threading, so I would imagine because I've kind of moved to using semaphore when I because I've had instances where lock just doesn't work. Huh. Index from the end. I don't like. I just don't like manipulating arrays like that normally. So okay, that's what I'm asking. Yeah, is it compatible with async await? I'm not seeing anything that says it's not, and it's in the threading namespace. Um, the purpose of lock is to create a critical section where only one thread can enter. So yes, thread safe. Nice, but not async await safe. Okay. Yeah, so I've been using semaphore slim, and I don't think even that's perfect. Escape sequences, partial properties, rest struct. Don't worry about ITO. We are very excited about session types. There we go. Extension types push back to C# 14. If you block a thread while waiting of your semaphore, it's not ideal, I suppose. Yeah, I think there's lessons to be learned from my perspective on the whole threading thing, and I think the distributed system stuff will definitely test that. Yeah, so extension types have gone back to 14. That makes sense. I figured the way they were talking about it, even in their talk, it was exciting stuff, but yeah. Okay, so as much as I want to continue, I've got things I need to get done. Um, I'm going to persevere here, right? It might seem it might be frustrating for some people, especially if you understand more about this than I do. But I think it's worth persevering and learning my way through this through a bit of failure, um, which I'm okay with. It definitely feels like it's the right path to go down. I think I can definitely get the processing that I am expecting from this. Um, and again, ultimately, I just have to kind of test it and learn. There's some reader write a lot that supports awaiting a lock. Huh. Yeah, there's a scenario in the changes. Another change is the view. So the view, I could actually get multiple messages. Actually, it's a similar case, right? I could actually get multiple messages at the same time um, for the acquire. So I create a semaphore and await the semaphore so that I can validate, because I could have actually had three different messages for the same entity come in, and each one is saying, "Oh, acquire this ID, acquire this ID, acquire this ID," and this pattern is just, does it exist in the data store? If it does, return it. Otherwise, create one as a dummy object so that data integrity is there. So again, patterns that I need to make sure that I'm more and more comfortable with as I go. But yeah, so we're gonna go right over to sorcery. Um, my favorite streams to just hang out in. She's building a large game, so we're gonna go over there. Um, I'm gonna continue working on this as much as I can today. In between building furniture and setting up new toy, and then I will return tomorrow and see if we can get some more progress made on this and see how it's going. So thank you very much for joining me. Thank you for hanging out. It's been a long stream. Um, Benefits of being off work, I suppose. Um, yeah, you too, Dan. Thank you very much. And I will see everyone later. Don't forget, it is a Wednesday. Unless told otherwise, I'm going to assume that One Lion will be streaming and a very worthwhile stream to go and hang out in. Currently implementing his Figma design in actual code, and again learning new things along the way as well. So well worth checking out. So thank you very much for joining me. Take care. Have a great day, and I'll see you later. Bye all.